of our elaborate miles, the end of everything that.
Hey YG!
Hey, we're back.
I don't know, you think we're gonna get thrown off YouTube after that last segment?
I hope not.
I hope people understand we're not trying to criticize in a negative way here. I mean, we're trying to get beneath the root of the problem here and help people out. We want to go out on this, our last show, with a message for you about what to watch out for. We're worried about you. We're worried about your money. We don't want you to lose any more money. We don't want to paint just the most horrid picture, because nothing's, you know, just remember, cycles take time. Cycles do not go straight up, straight down. There tends to be, just like the last cycle we talked about in the last segment, 100 years of stocks growing 8% a year. Yeah, there were high years, low years, but overall you had an 8% move. In terms of the next 100 years, the cycle we're talking about, again, it's going to be highs and lows. We don't know if it's going to mean we're going to start going up 2% a year. Maybe it means we're going to go up 30% a year. We have no idea. We just know that the factors to evaluate all this have drastically changed, and they're changing as we speak, and we think that as you look forward, they're going to change a lot more. So in this segment, here at Rooster School...
Oh, welcome to the Rooster School, everybody. Class is now in session.
Class is in session. And
the Honorable OG presiding today.
Professor OG, if you will.
Professor OG presiding today.
Yes, I'm trying to act a little more dignified today.
I hope so.
I don't want to lose my class because of the frivolity I'm prone to. But do you love school yet? Is this better than your old school?
Oh, much better, much better.
Much better.
Oh, yes.
There's no detention.
That's right.
But there's no girls in the class.
Well, that's true. You can't have it all.
Yeah. Well, I'd get a girl in the class for you if that's what it takes.
I'm hoping we'll do some cool interviews in the future with beautiful women.
Well, anyway, in segment 1 today at Rooster School, what we're going to talk about is what we think has already happened that is getting socialism, a more socialist economy going. And in segment 2, we're going to talk about some of our predictions of what we think will continue the movement. But first of all, if anybody is following the employment reports, where are all the jobs growing in our economy? The government. The government is adding more jobs than the private sector. There are service jobs going up, but the service jobs are going up not enough to offset all the job losses in the last quarter. And if you go back in time and you look at the last big job boom that we had in the 5 years preceding this year, the biggest new employer was not the private sector, it was the public sector. The government has been adding all the jobs. The government has the better pension programs now than the private sector. General Motors, Ford, everybody's negotiating out of pensions, reducing benefits, whereas the benefits for government employees continue to increase. That's socialism.
I just want you to know that I'm not employed in either of those sectors, the government or the private.
Yeah, I get wound up about this because I never worked for the government, and it bugs me that a government job which has no incentive tied to it, which doesn't evaluate performance, which has no real difficulty to maintain a job other than you show up to work and you don't do anything that breaks the law. That seems to be mostly what it takes to stay employed for the government. Yeah, you've got some minimum standards, but in corporate America, the bar seems a lot higher for performance, and yet we don't get the private sector isn't getting recognized for that anymore. So socialism seems to be occurring in the job sector. Okay, the second area where I see it is the bailout of corporate America. Now, the lenders, which would be the banks, the investment banks, they have had almost $1 trillion of cash that has been funneled into the system in order to make sure that they don't go under. Now, there's a lot of companies that go under because they run out of cash. But when you're a bank or an investment company like we've just had, the feds are putting all the money it takes to make sure they don't go insolvent. They blew it with Bear Stearns, right? Because they didn't put enough money in fast enough. I mean, if they would have put in a lot more money a lot faster, Bear Stearns wouldn't have even gone under. But if they hadn't put in the $1 trillion, virtually the entire banking system would have collapsed. So they say, hey, it's not a bailout. It is a bailout. You're putting $1 trillion of taxpayer money at stake, and you're taking care of these corporations and making sure they don't fail. I mean, if you don't call it a bailout, okay, fine, call it whatever you want, but you're putting money at risk. You didn't do that for anybody else in the economy. If you had done that for anybody else in the economy, believe me, everybody would call it a bailout. But because you did it for the system that controls money, we don't call it a bailout. You know what? Forget semantics. It's definitely a socialist move when corporations are getting taxpayer money to help them survive. I don't care what you say. Okay, now how about the bankrupt consumer? The bankrupt consumer is, they're borrowing more money. They're, everything's a lot tougher for the bankrupt consumer. So what's happening? Look at the article today. Did you see the paper today, YG?
No, but show us.
Can you zero in on this?
Uh-oh, let's see what that says.
This one right here.
Bush to expand help on mortgages. Ooh.
100,000 homeowners, including many who owe more than their houses are worth, it's going to help them reduce their monthly payments and give them a write-down that the federal government will pay for.
So they're handing out money, basically.
Is that a bailout?
Look at that beautiful woman just.
Is that socialism? I mean, they're basically walking up to you and saying, oh, you bought a house, you couldn't afford it, you can't take your payments. I'm going to take YG's money and give it to OG to reduce the amount of his house. That's socialism. Taken from a person who can afford to pay for his house and giving it to the person who was stupid enough to go out and pay too much money for a house and then not be able to make the payments because probably in a lot of cases they're out buying a nicer car than YG has.
Oh.
They're buying jewelry, nicer watch. You know, they're probably living better than YG, but because they can't make the payment on their mortgage, they're going to get a bailout from YG to help them pay. I mean, this is socialism. Socialism of the oddest kind.
So President Bush as Robin Hood.
President Bush is the new Robin Hood. And then the rebates, right? I mean, you know who gets the rebates? The middle class gets the rebates. You know who doesn't get the rebates?
Who's that?
The homeless don't get the rebates.
And now those are the people that probably need them.
Nope, they don't get the rebates. And you know who else doesn't get the rebates?
Who's that?
I think the people who make over like 150 grand or 200 grand a year. The people who are in the upper end of the middle class or whatever. You know, 200 grand a year. You can barely live in Orange County on that for 200 grand a year. But you don't get a rebate. But if you're making over 200 grand, then your money is being used to help bail out the middle class who are below your income level. So I'm telling you, if this isn't socialism, if this isn't the beginning signs of socialism, I don't know what is. I mean, there is definitely a movement in this country to help out the have-nots. And if the have-nots are being helped out, the money has to come from somewhere. It's coming from the haves. It's coming from, there's a lot of ways that they hide the bone. Because the bone is like paid for by lower interest rates. It's paid for by a declining dollar. Now people don't actually see this coming right out of their bank account, but when the dollar declines, their money's declining. When interest rates are declining, the person who's saved their entire life to try to retire in some sort of dignified fashion, they're earning 1 or 2% of their money to finance people who are spendthrifts and borrowing tons of money. This is the beginning of socialism as we see it.
I think the OG is telling us all to get our pitchforks out and head to City Hall right away.
Yeah, and as this is only session 1 of Rooster School, we will now head to session 2, where YG and I discuss where we think more socialist moves are going to happen very shortly. Thank you very much.